the reinventing myself, I felt like it wasn't done through a point of strategic advancement. I felt like it was done from a place of survival. It was like I felt completely lost, and I didn't know how to get back to who I was without finding that new me. And so, I don't know, I guess simply put, it was either reinvent myself and find out what my identity is, or basically die there and forever talk about what I was and be very disappointed in what the future was going to become.
Hey, welcome to Wealth Beyond Riches. Today's guest is a master marketer and social media influencer. With over 2 million followers across different social platforms, he's one of the best at promoting financial literacy, wealth building, and smart entrepreneurship. He is a former pro skateboarder turned successful entrepreneur. He's already on his second venture, a real estate firm called Commune Capital. He's the father of 4. He's a husband and a city councilman. And it's no surprise his friends say, "Bro, you look tired. What's going on?" Well, he's got 4 kids. I'm going to tell you about how Mikey and I met. We'll talk about the shoe company that never came to be, and he's going to unpack how he was able to remove that hardwired link that we have between our identity and our work. And the answer is going to surprise you. Mikey's stories are going to encourage, challenge, entertain you. And we are both massive extroverts, as we figured out as we were having coffee a few weeks ago together in California. Hey, if you're new to the show, welcome. This is not another finance podcast on getting wealthy faster. This is one layer deeper on finding true purpose and meaning by reclaiming our relationship with work and money that is broken. My hope for you is that you hear something that moves your life 1% closer to your true purpose and design, whatever season of life you're in. This is going to be good. Well, hey, Mikey, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to catching up with a friend and recording our conversation. So appreciate it.
To be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So I remember I was in Colorado with our mutual friend, Jordan, and I was asking a group like, hey, how do we grow our YouTube channel and our following? And he was like, hey, do you know Mikey Taylor? You've got to check out his content, like the best financial stuff on the internet. And then like 2 months later, I'm sitting in a hotel hallway in Orlando, and I'd started following you. And so I see you walk by, and I'm like, and I was just like, hey, Mikey. And there you are with your amazing smile. And it was cool to meet in person and catch up and stuff like that.
100%. Yeah.
So
100%.
Hey, as a business owner, as a CEO, I spend a lot of time learning from others like you as much as possible. I've been fortunate to learn from your content and your friendship. In fact, this whole podcast is, one, the inspiration behind it, and 2, some of the naming and stuff like that. You being one of the best at marketing online content. I remember reaching out to you and being like, hey, Mikey, here's what I'm thinking about a title and sort of a purpose. And you were so generous to send back a video response. I think you were shopping or something like that. And you're like walking around the beautiful California outdoor mall, which I'm very jealous of being in Chicago. And you were just like, hey, man, I love it. Here's what I love about it. So anyways, just want to thank you for that. Thinking about, there's 2 things we talk a lot about on here, money and work and our relationship with those 2. I want to jump into the money part. You had a career as a professional skateboarder and then had to redefine your career into something else. But first, you ended up doing really well and having a lot of success and having a lot of monetary success. How did you wrestle with that change, and how did you navigate coming into more money than you're used to at a very young age? Like, who was there to guide you along the way in that?
Yeah, that's good questions. So the wrestling with money at a young age, it was interesting because I was young. I was making more money than people typically made my age, but I wasn't making a ton of money in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, I started making 50 grand a year, but 50 grand a year for a 19-year-old, I was like, yo, I'm making it happen.
Yeah.
So I probably had a couple years of adjusting. I would say 19, 20, 21, those were years where I had to kind of learn how to control my ego and kind of getting a little bit caught up in the hype of who I was. And I had to learn that one. I would say by 25, 26, I had a pretty good grasp on the opportunity I had, how potentially short-lived it could be, and more of a clear view of what money actually is. And what was nice about that is that happened at a time where I started making decent money. And so I got really disciplined on kind of, the amount I was spending, the amount of money I was putting into investments. I had a pretty good system at play. The challenge that I had that I did not prepare for was I thought everything was financially focused, right? I thought I had a career that was short-lived. I was dependent on my income coming in because of the talent I had riding a skateboard. I wasn't sure how that was going to translate into the real world. And so the problem that I saw was that I can't get skateboarding to put me in a position to make money afterward. So what I need to figure out is how to have enough investments to basically carry me through that. So if I'm not able to get a job, I'll be fine. That was kind of the problem solution at a very simplistic form.
Yeah.
I figured that part out. I got to a point where before my career ended, I started a business that ended up doing very well. We ended up selling the company. I had become financially free at, I was 34. And that was basically all I thought I needed to do. I was not prepared for the identity parts that followed that. The no longer a pro skateboarder, people that followed me for what I was good at don't follow me for that anymore. And there was kind of the reinventing myself. I felt like it wasn't done through a point of strategic advancement. I felt like it was done from a place of survival. It was like I felt completely lost and I didn't know how to get back to who I was without finding that new me. And so, I don't know, I guess simply put, it was either reinvent myself and find out what my identity is, or basically die there and forever talk about what I was and be very disappointed in what the future was going to become.
Yes. Totally. Yeah. I think about this quote. There's no idols in the present. There's only idols in the future and in the past.
Right.
And you saw a turning point, a needed transition that was coming up. Didn't anticipate the identity part. What were some of those things that you did? You were making it up along the way, but what were some of those things that you did to go, here's how I need to redefine myself for this next season of life?
Okay, I'm going to give you all the trials, right? Because I had no pathway. I had no plan. I was like literally trying to just figure something out. How I started approaching it, I thought I just needed to start a new business, and that business would become my identity, and then I would feel better about myself and feel like I could actually apply the skills I had built to that point. And in the beginning, I thought I was going to basically create a shoe company, because my shoe company that sponsored me for skateboarding were the ones that dropped me. And that was kind of what ended my career. So my first move was just basically in spite. Like, how do I get back at them? I get back at them by, success and creating a company that competes with them and the whole nine. And thank God I got to the point of realizing I was doing this for the wrong reasons. And it was almost at the point of no return. I got to the point where I had the business plan. I had shoes designed. I had samples from China. I was like about to be a go, and I pulled out last minute. That was a huge blessing for me. From there, I figured out that there was a bigger issue at play. And so, I was listening to some of these like motivational, people, and like, okay, I need a morning routine, and I need to like write down my 10 affirmations and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, maybe that felt good for like a few weeks, but it didn't address the key pain point I was feeling. And so where I landed on this, I don't know where I got this idea, but I decided I was going to read the Bible. It was one thing where I was like, you know what? I've never done this before. I felt like if I'm trying to figure out why I'm here, let's start with this thing.
Yeah.
And so I basically dedicated 45 minutes every single morning to read the entirety of the Bible. It took me about a year.
Okay.
And that answered a lot of questions for me. And basically what the position it put me in afterward was, I'm not going to create something that becomes my identity, because that will only be my identity for the lifespan of that business or the lifespan of my career. I needed something that was going to put me on solid ground for my entire life. And that mindset changed everything, because then I put myself in kind of the position of, I know exactly what I'm here to do, And every business or every venture I create is only going to be to help build that original purpose out. And if any of those don't work, all good. The actual reason I'm here isn't challenged. And that was free. There was a freeing element to that I hadn't experienced prior.
That's incredible. That is not what I expected you would say. Man, so what is that why? What is that purpose that's underlying everything for you, that no matter what work looks like on the surface, deep down I'm doing this? Like what is that?
Okay, so for me, I actually don't even think it's for me. And I'm going to answer, but I do want to say these 2 points.
Yeah.
I think all of us have to address who we are, which is identity, and why we're here, which is purpose. If we don't know what those are, it makes it impossible for us to even gauge if we're doing a good job or not, right? Where I landed, and this was kind of really the journey of me going through reading the Bible, I know that basically God gave me certain talents to use on this earth that ultimately glorify him, right? The creator. And so, when you ask what the businesses are for, I feel like I need to create a business that ultimately gives credit to him for the skills and talents he gave me. And I try to apply that with everything I do now, whether it's, on a podcast with you, whether it's working with a broker, whether it's doing a deal with somebody and that deal blowing up. Like, I want to make sure that how I'm living my life ultimately honors him. And then that crosses over with my marriage, with my kids. I try to have that lens be front and center with every aspect of my life every day. Now, there's points where I fail miserably. Do not take this as holier than thou. I am a mess just like most of us are. But that at least becomes the standard of what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool. You found a purpose that's way outside of yourself, that points to something greater than you. And whether you are running a new real estate fund, whether you're doing online marketing content, whether you're a golf caddy in the future, which you probably wouldn't turn down the position, you have that underlying purpose that runs throughout any of those themes of work on the surface. That's
Right.
so cool.
Right. Now, look, I'll tell you from firsthand experience, like thinking that I had my identity and purpose solidified and then having it taken from you is the most painful and challenging experience you can ever go through. It is not an easy thing to recover from. So going through that, I never wanted to feel that again. And now it's put me in a position where, like, I don't want my business to fail, but if it did, that wouldn't be the experience I went through in the past. It would just be as simple as, okay, what's the next business I'm doing? I wouldn't have to try to find myself before launching the new thing.
That's really cool. So as you think about your family, coming home to that second job, the more important job, what is it you're trying to teach your kids right now from what you've learned?
Okay, what I'm trying to show the girls is actually a little bit different than my son. The reason why I say that, I want my girls to see what a man looks like. And I think they see that, they're going to see that, or I'm hoping that they see that on multiple fronts. One, how I am with their mom, right? What does my relationship look like with my wife? What I'm like when I'm outside working? What is the amount of energy and effort I'm putting in to provide? And I want to see them actually, I want them to see how I am when we're arguing. What does it look like when mom and dad have a conflict? How are they resolving it? And I guess my hope is that when they go out and I have to go through maybe what you're going through, the girls start dating and bringing people home, I'm hoping that I am the example of who they would look for in a man, right? My son, I want to be the example of what a man looks like to him. And even though it's through a different lens, a lot of it is by doing the same things, right? Like, how am I leading? How am I living my life? What does it look like when I fail? And, that's probably a newer one for me. Like, when I do things wrong, I want them to know. Like, I think a lot of us grow up feeling like our parents are perfect. And then we become parents and we're like, oh my gosh, they like barely knew anything. Like, I'm trying to figure this out. They were at the same stage. It's a very kind of humbling thing. And so, I don't know, when I get it wrong, I want them to know, yeah, I messed up here. And I'm recognizing it. I'm going to work to basically become better at it. I want them to see that component as well.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he has kids a little bit older than mine, and he was talking about, you just said it, letting your kids in on your pain. Like, hey, dad had a terrible meeting at work today. He really bombed today when he did X, Y, and Z. And just letting them see that and how you deal with that and what you do with that and who you turn to in that. You said something before. Right after skateboarding, you started a company. I guess, let me ask this. The shoe company removing their sponsorship, was that kind of the point where it was like, okay, I'm probably not doing this forever? Or was there a different point when you started thinking about what was next?
Okay, so there was a point in my career where I discovered something very valuable, very important, that I could actually become bigger and sell more product based on my personality than I could my skill set. And this came in the second half of my career. So I was probably late 20s at this point. And I started creating more content, showing who I was, not just the actual tricks of me landing them. And my brand actually grew much larger than it was. So the probably fourth quarter of my career was the largest kind of moment that I had the 14 years leading up to that. In that kind of time frame, I started my first business. It was in the craft beer industry. I started with two of my friends. In 2011, we launched it in 2012. In that point, we had become the fastest growing brewery in California. We were a disruptor. And we had, Anheuser, we had Constellation, we had Miller Coors, we had all the biggest kind of, beer companies bidding over buying our company. We ended up selling it to Molson Coors. And I had this moment where I was technically still a pro skateboarder. We had just exited our business. And I kind of just had this idea. I was like, you know what? I have enough brand recognition and I sell enough product that I could probably do this another 5 or 6 years. Like, even if I'm not skating at the same point, I can sell enough product. And I had a shoe company that basically ended my deal early. I had another 2 years on my contract. It was kind of political and it was painful. And I think, what I was experiencing with the loss of identity, loss of purpose, I was feeling that through the lens of it was their fault. The company that ended my career, you're the reason why I'm feeling this. And I think it was just like a desperation move of like, I don't want to feel like this. What's the easiest way to undo it?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, there was no wisdom there. That was just a full emotional decision that, thank God, I backed out of.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, sometimes we can either, take advantage of an opportunity and go, hey, I've got this longing or passion for what's next. And sometimes it's thrust upon us and it's external circumstances. It's how we react and respond that can really define us.
So to answer your question, it's not that I thought it would go forever, because I thankfully did know that at an early age, it was going to end. But with that, I think myself and a lot of pro athletes have this idea of what the end's going to look like. And I think for me, it was like, and maybe this is like ego, talking, but I was like, you know what, there's going to be a point where my contracts are going to end. I'm going to talk with my sponsors. We're going to do like a farewell part or, a retirement part, something, and to get like a phone call from like the new brand manager that I had never met before, basically so sterile, your contract's over, goodbye. It was like, and so I think that was probably where the shock came in, just the not expecting it and feeling kind of blindsided by it.
Yeah. So you made a pivot and discovered that building your brand. And what I love about that is like you were still in your career redefining what success looked like by building something sort of on the side, but it was on brand with everything that you were doing. And what I love is those had overlap rather than like skateboarding ended and then this next thing started. It's a theme I've been hearing from a lot of people who are, considering the next transition. You've built some amazing brands. I was just pulling up some stats last night. Nothing like embarrassing you on air. Over 700,000 followers on TikTok, as the kids call it, the clock app. 850,000 followers on Instagram, 500,000 followers on Facebook. So you've got Gen Z following you, you have millennials following you, and then you have grandparents following you. So 500,000 grandparents on Facebook. following you. And then 39,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is no joke. As you have these brands and people are attracted to your personality, which makes a ton of sense. You're super fun to talk to. You're amazing in person, also on camera. How do you stay grounded with the number of people who probably have comments and thumbs downs about what you might have to say? Like what do you do to just stay rooted?
Oh, really, really good question. One, it gets easier as you get older. This was, some of the things I was able to learn through my skate career. And so at a young age, I had to learn how to deal with basically negative criticism. Like when people are talking crap about you, how do you not let that affect your kind of skill or your passion? For me, when I was skating, it almost did. Like this was before social media. My career started in the early 2000s. So we had message boards, like Reddit boards, right? And I never paid attention to them until one time I was in Spain on kind of a world tour. I had just put out this video part with this, shoe company that put out a bigger movie, full-length video. And one of my friends, who was another pro, was basically stuck on the message boards because they were basically talking crap about his part, right? Mm. And I walk into the lobby and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm on the message boards. And I'm like, why? And he's like, dude, they hate me. Like, they do not like my part. I'm like, okay, sweet. And as I'm just about to go to my room, he goes, let's look at what they have to say about you.
No.
And what I should have said is, no, thank you, and kept walking. But I was like, okay. And it was the first time I experienced just person after person after person talking crap on me, right? And it was hard. That probably changed the next 4 years of my career, because I got to a point where I didn't want people to hate on me. So I tried starting to skate in a way that they would like, right? It was almost like I wasn't on the offense of trying to capture the largest opportunity. I was almost on the defense of trying to stop hate from coming in. And within 4 years, I went from like one of the top up and coming pros to almost becoming irrelevant in that. And that's kind of when I discovered the personality element. And it was not easy. Like, it was not easy going through, not allowing somebody's opinion on you to change who you are. It got easier when I got married, though. When I got married, I stopped caring so much about what other people think and thought, and I more was focused on what my wife thought of me. And then having kids, it was a little bit easier, because then I just started paying attention to their view of me, and it helped. But here's where I'm at now. There's two parts to it. One, you actually want people to hate on you, because people will never love you if people don't hate you. And so if your goal is always to be liked, you're dead in the water, right? If you want to ever truly be loved, you also are going to be hated. That's just how it goes, right? I think that puts you in a position to make greater impact than it does in this middle ground of trying to be liked, but no one actually even knows who the real you is. The other part is when you're creating content, your engagement goes way, way up when people don't like you.
Yeah.
It's how it goes. So if you want to really build a brand and get recognition, you're going to need people not to like you. And then simultaneously, you're going to get people that rally behind you. And then you've got conversations in the comment sections, and then your engagement's going nuts. So that's probably a very long-winded answer to say, I started to become very comfortable with who I was, and I no longer allowed other people's opinions to ultimately value who I was.
Would you say, so one, I'm hearing the magic happens at the extremes, at love and hate. Two, be comfortable with who you are. You talked about that year of reading through the Bible. Do you think that impacted your identity as well, and like who you are, who God made you to be?
Well, yeah, that was just like, it came later in the stack, only because I got married, I had 2 kids, then I went through this moment, right?
Yeah.
But, to bring the I guess the total stack, or the hierarchy of opinions of me, right? Yeah. Yes, it would go God, wife, kids. And then I think the other thing that's fascinating too is, and you'll learn this through social media as well, the people that do not like you actually follow you more and pay attention to you more than the people that are lukewarm on you. Like the people who's like, oh, yeah, I like his content. They're not following you inside and out. The people that hate you are. And so when you think of it through that lens, where you actually have a greater opportunity to make an impact on somebody who doesn't like you because they're actually paying attention to what you're doing, that actually makes the person it makes the person feel like an opportunity and not the enemy.
That's really cool. Recently, you had a cool article in Business Insider that said, quote, Mikey Taylor started his career as a professional skateboarder, making barely enough money to get by. A friend taught Taylor the basics of real estate investing as he saved early during his career. He now runs a real estate fund and educates investors on how to create a road to financial freedom. How would you define financial freedom? I feel like that term gets thrown out there, but I'm just curious, like, how do you see that?
Oh, Ed, the simplistic version of it is once you have enough interest coming in off your investments that cover your lifestyle. You not having to work or sacrifice time to support yourself. I would say that's kind of the true point of financial freedom, but that it's actually more nuanced than that. There's multiple different iterations of it, but my original understanding of it as a pro skateboarder was make enough passive income from my investments to become greater than the income my sponsors were paying me, and put myself in a position that forward facing, however long I'm going to be not working for, I have enough to support that, whether it's inflation, whether it's market corrections, make sure that I can sustain that passive income for the whole run, as opposed to only being able to support myself for 3 years and then market correction and then, et cetera, et cetera.
So like making a trade to take my passive income, have it surpass my current income, and that way I can just make the trade work wise and really not feel the impact at all.
Yeah, like I felt like it was just options. Like I always wanted the option to work. And the funny part is I'm going to most likely work for the rest of my life. I am not sure I'm ever going to retire, which is very weird that I love the idea of financial freedom, but I really liked the idea of the option. I liked the option of choosing that I wanted to do this versus having to do it in order to survive.
Tell us about what you're doing right now. So you've got Commune Capital, a couple different real estate funds. Like, what are you spending your time on right now?
The majority of my time gets spent on our business. We are a private equity real estate firm. So we have 2 asset classes that we really focus on, storage and multifamily. And so we go out and we raise money from investors. Investors come into either our funds, or every once in a while we'll do a syndication. And then we usually put that into an opportunity of development. We're typically building. And so we'll build an apartment or we'll build a storage unit, and then we'll lease it up. And then, income comes in, and when done right, we get to distribute that income to investors. Our business gets to participate in it as well. And then we try to do that over and over and over so that ultimately our investors can achieve financial freedom passively. And then our business, and then my equity in our business is another wealth building tool that I'm personally using. Yeah. So that's the majority of my time. I'm a council member as well. So I would say it's not a ton of time, maybe 20, 25 hours a month go towards city council. And then everything else is family. It's wife and kids.
Yeah, totally get that. Yeah. And you guys are in the thick of it too. A 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, did you say, are the youngest two?
Yeah, 3, 1, 8, and 11.
Yeah, you're in
So
it,
we
man.
just got my son out of diapers. So at least it's not 2 in diapers, it's just 1.
Yes, yeah. I feel like when that youngest one is like putting on their own shoes, that's when you're like, we can do a lot of things now.
Yeah, that's a big one. So I'm getting this right now. Like this seems to be a constant comment is, bro, you look tired, or bro, you look stressed, right? And I'm like, I am tired. I am stressed. What are you guys talking about? Saying like 1 kid is hard, let alone 4. Being married is hard. Having 1 business is hard. Like all of this is hard. Like if I didn't look tired, I'm not sure I'd be doing this well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're probably going to end up losing your job or your family. Hopefully not both
Or I'd
if
have
you're
no
not tired.
job. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're trying to do big things, there's a cost to that. There's a sacrifice that you have to make. If you want to try and become responsible with a lot, that's not an easy task. You've got to build yourself to it. And those
Yeah.
next steps are not easy. I'm going through a next step right now. New kid and second job. I added onto my workload.
Well, and you've got fulfillment in those different areas of your life. So it is those things that actually fulfill. I think that's where part of us have this just wrong relationship with work, where it's like you said, work as much as you can to earn as much as you can so that you don't have to work anymore. And then you realize, oh, the work actually brought a ton of fulfillment.
Right.
And like there's healthy identity in work, as long as it's not your main number one thing in your life, but other
Right.
things are like faith and family, then work has a really healthy identity because we were made to work and we were made to do excellent work. And when you do those things, fulfillment comes through that.
Like, look, I love golfing. Like like part of me goes, gosh, like, am I just going to golf every day of my life? And then I think I would be miserable doing that. Like, I don't think that's actually what we're called to do. I understand that as we get older, we'll probably be able to handle less. Like there will be like a scaling back,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think we are called to still make an impact and be responsible for things or people in the community. So even though like my company is really built around financial freedom, I'm not sure I'll ever exercise it,
That's amazing. So as you think about that, a lot of people I talk to thinking about retirement or that next season of life who have financial freedom. I was just talking to a guy the other day, millions of dollars coming in passively from the business that he used to run and still owns. And in the same breath, in the same conversation, he said, I have everything that I need. I don't need anything else. And we have no income needs at all whatsoever. I started talking about, certain kinds of investments that have an impact on the world around them and, find the greatest problems in the world and solve them. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. But I guess I just don't feel rich enough for something like that. And I was like, wow, what a paradox that a lot of us have. A lot of us have more than we need, but at the same time feel like it's never enough. Yeah. So when you think about financial freedom and creating it for others and for yourself, yet not stopping to work, what are the things with your money that bring you the most value and the most fulfillment?
That's a good one. I think options are important, right? Like if I look back when my skate career ended, that the next year, 2, 3, 4 could have looked very, very different if I hadn't been planning for the future. And like to give you context, like even this business, Commune Capital, I didn't start paying myself until 5 years into the business. I wasn't drawing any income. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't prepared for that. So in the case of the experience that my family and I went through, it would have looked radically different if I wouldn't have done that. And so I'm thankful for it. It gave me that option and time available to build something and take my time building it the correct way. Other than that, for me personally, I'm a journey person. Like I like setting the goal and I like everything that it takes to get to that goal. And then typically when I hit it, I need to find something else. The achieving it itself only lasts for maybe a split second for me. But what I really enjoy is the path to get there. So I don't know. As far as the money journey, I just like setting the goal and then having to like be very strategic and disciplined on where I put investments to try to get to that goal. That's the fun part for me. So I don't know. Right now, I'm just enjoying it. Like I enjoy building this business. Once this business gets to the point where it becomes more passive, knowing myself, I'm going to lose interest and I'll have to go and create the next company because this is my enjoyment. This is like the passion is the trying to figure it out and trying to solve the what feels like larger problems in the beginning and having to do that with limited resources. Like that is fun for me.
I hear that a lot. one of the things that, there's different buckets of money, how much you give, how much you save, how much you spend, and how much you owe, like taxes and debt and stuff like that. As you look at giving as a piece of what you do with your money, how has giving, whether it's to charity or church or whatever organizations, how has that impacted you along your money journey along the way?
In the beginning, it felt more like a discipline. Like my wife and I, and then before my wife, myself, I have been kind of consistently giving about 10% for probably the last 15 years of my income. And in the beginning, I didn't really like see the blessing of it or what it was really doing. It truly felt more like a discipline.
How did that start? Like, what was that point where you were like, let's start giving 10% of my income? Because that's like a huge number.
Honestly, this one came just from like the calling of tithing, right? It was like,
Mhm.
oh, 10%, giving 10%, 10% is going to go to the church, or we're going to, there's a handful of kids that we sponsored. It was just, okay,
Yeah.
it was more, I felt like this was something I'm supposed to do,
Yeah.
but I didn't see the fruits of it until actually probably about 10 years ago. And when we sold our business, when we sold St. Archer, the amount that I gave that year was large, right?
Yeah.
It was larger than probably any year I had ever made. Like my highest grossing year, it was more than that.
Yeah.
And in that, over that next year, there were people that would come up to me and say like, hey, I know that, like, for example, I know that you gave this money to the church that allowed us to open this ministry or hire these people. We've been blessed by that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like to see what that does, that was really cool, And then I think we started sponsoring kids around that time as well. So like, getting letters from kids and seeing kind of the impact that you can have by ultimately creating something that might give you something like a windfall of cash, and how you can then use that to bless others. I think that's the full circle of fulfillment, and probably the most rewarding thing ultimately about building something. Really, it was really cool. And so I don't know. I would say what I also learned is there's points where it's hard to give when you're barely getting by. What I also found is like it's hard to give when you're doing well also. I know that makes no sense, but when we sold the business, I looked at the check and went, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot of money." And
Yeah.
you selfishly go, "I could probably use that."
Yeah.
And so I wasn't prepared for that, but I think in both examples, if you learn to be disciplined and give when times are good and times are bad, you're blessed throughout it. It's really special what happens post giving.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I think with you described a couple things there. One is you were also living out your identity as you did that. As you gave and realized my giving is having an impact on somebody else. That's what I love about generosity is you actually received.
Right.
Like you received being able to see that impact. And sometimes I think that what you get is it's obviously way higher on whatever scale we're talking about than what you gave up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's that upside down economy where you received much more, that it allows you to build that muscle and do it again and again, which
Yeah.
is super cool.
Yeah.
Number two, I forgot what number two was going to be, but I love that cycle. I heard what you said about it is harder. I'm thinking of any business owner or CEO or entrepreneur who's listening and they're coming up on that sale. First of all, talk to somebody about giving prior to the sale. A shameless promo there, but it'll save you more taxes probably. But secondly, not tax advice. Like it could be harder as you're approaching that sale and you're seeing all those zeros to go, is 10% still, maybe it's 8, what, maybe 5% would be okay. Cause I'm
Right.
sure you could rationalize that
Right.
away.
You're like, is it
Uh,
gross? Is it net? Is it?
Totally. And it's only you in your head. That's where wives are really special because they can come in and be like, hey, it's always worked out with 10%. So,
Right. Right. That's right. 100% right.
all right. Being in the real estate business, what do you see out there in terms of real estate? There's the commercial real estate's the next shoe to drop, which I'm sure you never hear on a daily basis. What do you see in terms? There's different sectors, obviously, of commercial real estate. What do you see that's thriving? What do you see that's struggling right now?
Yeah. So the thing about real estate is, one, it's fragmented. And two, when we talk about real estate, we tend to bundle them all to every asset class together. But in reality, the one that we follow the most is typically residential. It's what is my home worth and what are the comps, right? Commercial real estate works very differently than your primary residence. Your primary residence is valued off of a comp. Commercial real estate is valued ultimately off a cap rate and your net operating income. So they run more like a business and less like a made up number based on what the person next to you could sell it for. So with that in mind, then each asset class is impacted differently in a moment like this. And then those asset classes are impacted differently based on the county or state you're in. If we're going through asset classes right now, office is probably the most obvious one of, the impact it's having, but office hasn't really corrected the way that I think it's going to for, what vacancy percentage is at and how value has come down in relation to that. It's not accurate yet. So I think that's going to continue to come down. Multifamily, and this is probably if we compare it to 2008, and no, I'm in multifamily. So if you sense a bias, I just want to put it out there, I'm in multifamily. Multifamily during the last recession, during the financial crisis, performed actually pretty well. And what happened is a lot of people expected blood in the streets, and that blood never came the way it did in single family. What we're seeing on multifamily, you're seeing cap rates soften. So if you're not familiar with cap rates, think of it as in a business like you have a multiple off your EBITDA, you have a multiple off your gross revenue. And so if cap rates move up, the value of your property goes down. Right now in our area, we've seen cap rates move by about 0.5 percentage point, in some cases three quarters. That's a haircut. That means real estate has come down. But what you've seen simultaneously is rents go up due to inflation. So you're not seeing a lot of price movement. You're seeing a lot more deals though. There are a lot of people trying to get out of deals, which is a great place to be if you're buying, but it is more difficult to raise money. So with all that said, when it comes to real estate, what you have is deal flow that is everywhere, and capital is hard to find. Or the reverse, which would be 2 years ago, capital is everywhere and there's no deals. So right now there's been a shift where there's more deals than maybe capital available. We think it's a good buying opportunity. Storage, you're finally starting to see it soften. Storage has been saturated for quite some time, which in our opinion means good buying opportunity. Hospitality, I think, is an interesting one. I don't know, I think Airbnb made such a big impact on, something like hotels, but I actually think Airbnb is not competitive anymore. And I'm kind of anticipating a snapback. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more people go to hotels with more amenities now that pricing is actually more competitive at hotels than it is Airbnb. So we'll see how that plays out. We're seeing a lot in the mobile home kind of sector. Anything affordable housing, I think, is a big opportunity. But all in all, we are buying right now. Our company is definitely believers that it is almost impossible to time the market. If you attempt to time it, you have to time it twice because you got to get out, then you got to get back in. Where we'd rather have a very disciplined kind of buy-sell strategy and stay in basically no matter what.
One of my favorite things that you do online is you get like a dividend check from the rental incomes coming in, and it's like the check you're sending out to your investors, and you're like, look at this, look how much this is. That's just so cool because it's that feedback loop, almost like with giving. Like here's the benefits of investing in real estate where you're collecting rents, and that's your dividend check. So
yeah, there was that. So this is what happened for me. Do not think that this is the only way to do it, because that's kind of the beauty of investing. There is no one size fits all. But for me, I started off with more of the conventional kind of setup. It was, SEP IRAs, Roth IRAs, and stocks and bonds. I was sitting on cash, but it was more of a kind of a basic kind of portfolio, I guess, how would I call it? Strategy.
Yeah.
When I started investing in real estate, this is probably, I don't know, 10 years after I had been pro. So the barrier to entry to real estate is higher, as we know. But there was something about getting a dividend from cash flow from a physical asset. I don't know why. For me, it felt more valuable than maybe a dividend off a stock, even if the numbers were equal.
Yeah.
I have no clue why. I don't know how to explain it. There was something about the physical asset that I knew where that asset was. I could drive by it and see it. And so when I got that first check, it was almost like this big aha moment for me where I went, oh my gosh, if I just get more of these, that's the control I'm trying to take away from my employee. And I became completely addicted to it. And what that meant was it was a new added layer of discipline to not spend on cars and clothes and all these things that were going to ultimately not be here a year out, so that I could put more money into these assets so that I could get more of a dividend. That was talk about a feedback loop. Yeah, that was a big one for me. So that's why I'm a big believer. Like you'll hear people say there's no point in investing until you make a certain amount of money. I actually don't agree with that. I think you should start investing before you have a lot, because when you start seeing stuff work, it's almost like this added layer of confidence that you can achieve it. And then I think you end up getting to your goal faster than trying to wait until the perfect time to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've got compound interest on your side. You, like you said, you can't time the market, but time in the market is what is going to compound throughout that feedback loop and build that wealth over time.
Right.
Which is really, really helpful. So you're not going to be doing commune forever. What in your mind, if you had to guess right now, is going to be the next thing? What would you be doing 5 to 7 years from now if you snapped your fingers and you'd be there?
I think the next thing I do is actually going to be around marriage. Actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like marriage retreats and marriage. I think the focus will be, for the next company I start, something along the lines of, how do you maintain a healthy marriage with a type A entrepreneur or athlete or driver? How do you reconcile that? So that I have a feeling that's what I'm going to do. That'll probably be the next thing. It's either that or, I'm not sure yet on the political side if I end up doing more or not. I would say those are probably the two things I'm looking at, though. Do I go further on one side? Is it a crossover of both?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That's awesome. Where did that come from? That marriage idea, that focus?
I got a call, gosh, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, from an agent who managed a couple skaters. And he basically reached out and asked if he could connect me with one of his skaters, one of the skaters he was managing. And he just said, he's like, look, he's married. They've got 2 little kids and they're struggling. Like, they're having a hard time with their marriage. And you've been so open about the challenges you've had with your marriage. I've watched kind of what you've done. Is there any way you could just talk to him? I'm like, for sure. And so like that happened, and then it happened again and again. And I remember coming home kind of telling my wife, like, I don't know, like, I think this is something I would like to do at some point. And she was like, really? I'm like, yeah. And from that point, there's been so many different occurrences that have happened that have just felt like these like voices or nudges of confirmation that I'm going to do something regarding this, So we'll see. I don't know the when, but I have a feeling I'll do something with that in the future.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, and having a vision for where you could be headed, like you said, you're creating options with your life, and now you've got some to point towards. Right. So that's really cool, and something where you can impact other people's lives. Yeah. And you're already you've done it. You're already doing it, and you've got your own test case at home constantly. Right. that you're working on, right. Which is awesome.
Right.
A friend of ours said to my wife the other day, they're both wives of business owners, and they were just talking about the different things they were involved in. I'm a mom, I lead this Bible study, help with this organization. And then my friend's wife was like, well, and you're the wife of a business owner. So like, don't discount that role, because you're the sounding board, you're the internal board of directors. And I call my wife the chief insight officer, because I'll be like, hey, this is going on and this and this. And then she'll be like, well, it's obvious. You should just do this.
Yeah. The amount of influence that my wife has, and even like how that, I don't know if manifest is the right word, but the impact that can have on my daily kind of behavior, it's huge. You know, if my wife and I are off, like I do not perform the same way in the office. I absolutely don't. When my wife and I are on, I'm firing at all cylinders at that point. So they go hand in hand, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. You got the top priority the right way, and that's going to impact the rest of your life. All right, man. Are you ready for some fun questions here?
Give it to me.
All right. So as you went out as a professional skateboarder, don't you usually skate to music? Like, isn't that kind of the thing?
Yeah, correct. Well, for video parts, yes.
Okay.
Skating, I couldn't do it, but a lot of people do.
Oh, okay. All right. So what songs did you skate to in videos?
Gosh, one video part, I skated to Dinosaur Jr., one I skated to The National, one I skated to The Doves. And then I had one video I think I skated to actually a Jay-Z song. The whole entire video was like, you know, a rock compilation. So it's like, you know, Memphis Bleak and Jay-Z, like Cameras, a whole bunch of people. It was cool.
What's one thing you love right now? Could be anything. Could be a product. It could be a person. It could be an activity. What's one thing that you're loving right now?
Activity, it's golf. Product, it's nootropics. Person, there's so many people that I'm loving right now. I have a really good group of people around me. I'm gonna say my team. I'm in the office. I have a phenomenal team. They make doing this business really enjoyable. So I would say I've got a lot to love right now. A lot of blessings.
Yeah. I love your videos of trying to get on camera the people on your team who don't want to be on camera.
No. I'm like, you guys are giving me better content, but then by trying to hide it and run from it, you're giving me more valuable content. Like,
oh, it's so good. It's so good. I'll tell you one thing I love right now. We live on a cul-de-sac. We're on the end of the cul-de-sac, so we're not even in the cul-de-sac really. But down on the end of the cul-de-sac, my son, his two buddies live there, and we got a temporary, you can fold it up pickleball net that we can like put in the circle, and we set it up, and it's so cool. It takes like a minute. It's almost like a quick tent, and you can set it up. And we threw it out there one Friday evening, and there were like 12 kids, 8 rackets, thankfully 0 injuries from rackets hitting other people. But man, it was super fun. And when the Amazon truck came down the cul-de-sac, it could go around the net, and we didn't have to move it. We just all like stood in the middle by the net, and we're like, just go around. So
dang, that's pretty cool. That's a good thing to love.
Fun. Oh my goodness.
That seems to be actually the number one thing that the majority of Americans are loving right now is pickleball.
Dude, I've loved this so much. Thank you so much. Not only for your friendship, but also for, man, so much wisdom that somebody listening today is going to get something out of it no matter what, whether they're a business owner, whether they are a husband or wife, a father or mother. Man, they have so much to get out of this. And I know I got a ton out of it. That's why I do this, is to learn from the best. And I appreciate you just being so transparent with your story. And yeah, really looking forward to the time when we can do this in person sometime. So we'll have to do that in the near future.
100%. Thanks for having me. It's great seeing you.
Hey there. If this episode impacted you, would you share it with a friend right now? That would mean a lot to me. And even better, if you could leave a review of the show. Maybe mention what part of this conversation stuck with you. On the first Tuesday of each month, we're going to bring you some more stories of great leaders who have learned what it means to be truly wealthy. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to drop that on the first Thursday of each month. So keep an eye on that. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.